What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Suitcase. So obviously, I am not Kenneth Havens, but we just did a great interview with Scott and Annie Miller, who are U.S. missionaries to kids and families. So, man, I'm just telling you, you're gonna love this conversation we're about to have. I'm really excited for you guys to watch it. Kenneth says hello. He had a lot going on and wasn't able to be a part of this one, but we didn't want to miss the opportunity to talk to these guys. So, man. Andy has a fantastic story about just some things that happened in her past, and Scott, the way that he was raised and what they're doing now. And so we are so excited to get to share this conversation with Scott and Annie Miller. You guys check it out. Hey guys, welcome to Suitcase, where we unpack life. You probably are wondering, but I am not Kenneth Havens. Kenneth is actually out on a truck this morning, so he is taking care of some things out in the real world, but we are here in podcast world with some awesome guests I'm really excited to have on the show today. This is Scott and Annie Miller. We go way back, and man, I'm just so excited to be able to talk to you guys today. God is doing a lot of things in your lives, and even beyond that, you're just having a lot of influence with people, and you have a really great story. And Kenneth and I were talking about just your history and some things that you guys have gone through and all that stuff. And it's really cool that I get to do this podcast because I go way back with these guys a long time. Our kids are like best friends. We were talking a minute ago that our two 18-year-olds decided to go with your family over to Chuck E. Cheese. So, you just find things to do, you have a lot of fun. But anyway, so let's jump into it. Scott and Annie Miller, you guys tell us what you're doing and all that stuff. Give us kind of your story, and then we'll talk a little bit more.
Awesome. So our story, I am amazed every time I tell our story. As a kid, I wanted to be a veterinarian when I was real young because I thought you just got to love on kids all the time. But then when I realized veterinarians didn't get to do that, I went.
Wait. A veterinarian loved on kids?
You thought veterinarians loved on kids? This is... Wow. Just
kidding. Okay, back up. Rewind.
So do you mean like kittens and puppies? That's what you were interested in?
Or? Yes. On animals, not on kids. Crisscrosses. Lord, every moment, every day.
I
learn something new every day. I knew she wanted to be a veterinarian.
I didn't know that. I didn't know she wanted to be a vet. You didn't know either, which is crazy because you're married to her. And she was confused that
Stay confused. It's the state of my being.
So you wanted to be, did you want to be a pediatrician?
I wanted to be a veterinarian.
A veterinarian so you could love on animals. Okay,
yes.
Gotcha.
I wanted to be a veterinarian so I could love on animals.
All right, we've cleared that up.
Then I realized veterinarians had to hurt animals. And so I didn't want to be a veterinarian. But all my life, all I wanted to be was a mom.
Okay.
I watched my mom work full-time, not be able to be present all the times that she wanted to be with her family and walk through some difficult things. And that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to grow up and I wanted to be a mom. And so here we are many years later, and we are parenting 6 boys.
Oh, my gosh.
6 boys. There is a lot of smell in the Miller house.
And no food.
No food in the Miller house. Yeah.
Never
any food.
So, but a lot of fun, and we're blessed. And so at the end of the day, our story is our family. What the Lord has done in and through us, through our family, and everything that we do flows out of that. That's who we are. And through our relationship with the Lord. And so right now we are newly appointed United States missionaries to children and families.
What does that mean?
And so that means that we get to travel the United States. Alabama is our home state, and it's our first priority. And then we get to travel wherever the Lord opens up the doors of opportunity, and we get to partner with local churches and communities to help spread the gospel, to help kids and families understand God's truth
awesome.
About who he is, who they are, and how they can live victoriously in him.
It's awesome.
And so that hadn't always been our story. We haven't always been missionaries. Scott grew up in church. And share a little bit about your...
Yeah, I grew up in church my whole life. I remember as a kid, I think it was 9 years in a row that I didn't miss a Sunday school, which was kind of cool, right? I think mine's doing that now.
It is, yeah. We'll tilt it just like this, just a little bit.
There we go. But yeah, but my whole life, I mean, that's what my whole life was in church, and that was my mom. My mom was you're going to be at church no matter what. You're sick, you still go to church, and I appreciate that looking back. But we were always in church, never missed, and that was my story. But there was still things in my life that wasn't right.
Right. Sure.
I could just hide it better. Right.
Right. No doubt. No doubt.
So, so I lived my life under those things. I never wanted anybody to know some of the things that was going on in my life.
Sure.
Because I had an image to withhold, and uphold. And so, so I had things in my life, and we look at things and we're like, okay, well, I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I didn't do drugs. And so I didn't do the big sins.
Yeah. Right. Ooh, the big sins. Right.
But we all know that a sin is a sin.
That's right. That's right.
And so for me, it took me a long time to realize that hey, man, these sins are just as big as these sins.
Yeah. Sure.
And so, just learning that. And I think, that's been kind of cool. My road's been a little bit different because I've always been in church. And so I always thought, oh, Lord, I wished I would have done some of those other things where I have a testimony.
Right. No.
But looking back, now I know that's a testimony itself.
Absolutely.
That God kept me from those things.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's the testimony we wanted our kids to have. And so my story was a little bit different. I didn't grow up in church, in and out of church throughout my life.
Right.
And then at 8 or 9 years old, I had a friend invite me to Vacation Bible School. And so we went, and I understood the message of salvation. I understood what sin was, and I asked Jesus to be the Lord of my life that day.
Wow.
And I genuinely loved the Lord. I wanted to go to church. I had a heart for the Lord. My mom had gotten saved early on, where she surrendered her life to the Lord, but was not discipled. And so still just struggled with a lot of things in her life. And so we would go to church some off and on, not consistently.
Right.
Had friends that would take me. But I really had a heart that was good and wanted to honor God and wanted to do right. And then I got into middle school, and things that I had hated in life and things that I saw other people doing that I wanted no part of, all of a sudden my peers were doing those things and inviting me in.
Right.
And so because I didn't want to not be cool, or I didn't want people to think I was weird, I began to make some of those choices that I saw my friends making.
Sure.
I remember specifically sitting in a friend's bedroom one day, and she offered me a cigarette, and I hated cigarettes. I hated it. My parents smoked. I had learned at school what happens to your lungs and your body, and I hated it. But that day, sitting in my friend's bedroom, she lit a cigarette and asked me if I wanted to smoke it. And I was like, yeah, I smoke, absolutely. I want to be cool, right?
How much did you cough that first time?
I held it together, But anyway, so I played on the outside this cool image, and on the inside, I knew that I had just let go of a piece of my heart because I knew I was in disobedience to what I knew to be right.
Well, can I ask you a question just for clarity? Because obviously everybody that watches this, isn't are not Christians or the same background that we have and that kind of thing. So we're, you're talking about, that smoking. So you said you kind of lost a little piece of your heart. I want you to just kind of talk about that just a little bit deeper, if you will, from not a churchy kind of perspective, right? So you've got, and I know this is not what you're saying, but are you saying that a cigarette was the piece of your heart that killed you? Was that what it was?
It wasn't the cigarette. It was me doing what was wrong when I knew how to do what was right.
Ah, there you go.
So for me, smoking that cigarette, it wasn't about a cigarette. It was about, I knew that was not right for me. And I chose to do it anyways because I wanted to impress somebody else.
That's good.
And so that's really the definition of sin, is disobedience to God, doing what's wrong when we know how to do what's right.
Right.
And the Lord teaches us in His Word that we already know, it's already built into us.
Sure.
That knowing the difference between right and wrong. And so that moment, I began to turn a different direction where I had a heart to care and to do what was right.
Right.
All of a sudden, my heart was to please the people around me. And that began just a downward spiral. I started walking in complete disobedience to my mother. and doing things that I knew I should not be doing.
Sure.
I started sneaking out of the house at night. I started experimenting with drugs, experimenting with boys. All of this, I was 12 years old at the time.
Wow.
And just trying different things. I ran away from home because my mom wouldn't let me do something I wanted to do. It was dumb. It was stupid, but I ran away for a few days. And when I finally got sick of it, I called my mom, and my mom loved us a lot.
Right.
She didn't know how to give tough love.
Right.
And so that firm discipline and consistent discipline. And so anyways, I had run away and called Mom. I was ready to come home, and my mom obviously is like, yes, I'll come pick you up. I didn't want her to know where I was at, so I met her at a gas station. She puts me in her car. I think we're going home, and things are better because the couple of days I was away, it was not good.
Right.
And so she picks me up, puts me in the car. I think we're going home, and she pulls up at a drugstore and just sits there for a minute, and then a cop pulls up beside us.
Oh, no.
And takes me out of her car, puts me in his car, and we head to the youth correctional facility.
What?
And so...
and how old were you at that time?
I was 12.
Still 12,
I was 12 at that time. Yeah, so probably right around my 13th birthday.
Man.
And so just one thing after another, I'm hanging around with people that are living the same lifestyle. They're going through the same kind of things.
Sure.
And just struggling to make the good choices.
Right.
Because I didn't know how. I didn't have the resources. I didn't have the support system to, if I made a good choice, to be encouraged in that good choice. 'Cause
Right.
everyone around me was making really poor choices.
Sure.
So fast forward a bit of time, and I really got into doing a lot of different drugs, really in full rebellion to my mother. And so at 13 years old in 7th grade, I ended up spending the third quarter of my 7th grade year in a drug rehab facility for teenagers. And so that was a hard season, but I really learned a lot.
Sure.
I learned a lot about who I was and we went through a lot of counseling. And so I'm thankful for that season.
Right.
Cause I learned a lot. It just equipped me in a lot of ways. But it didn't get me back right.
Sure.
And so I got out while I'm in rehab. I'm making plans. I met new people that were making bad choices.
Right.
And we began to make other bad plans for when we got out. And so I wasn't ready for change. Fast forward the summer of my 7th grade year, I had been in and out of the correctional facility for youth for a while. And the summer of my 7th grade year, I had been sexually active in all kinds of different things. And I thought I might be pregnant.
Wow.
And so I had a friend who was 16 years old, and she could drive. And she said, Annie, I know where you can go and take a free pregnancy test, and they don't call your parents. And so I get in her car. She drives me to a little brick building with a glass door, drops me off to come back and pick me up a little while later. And I walk in by myself, sign a piece of paper, go and take a test, and then sit in a room. And a young counselor comes in, begins to speak with me, share her story with me about how she had had an abortion and how negatively it had impacted her life. And she did not want anyone to go through what she had gone through.
Sure.
And that's the reason why she was there at the center counseling. And so before she gives me the results of the test, she walks me through what would I do if I was pregnant. And then she walks out of the room. She comes back in, tells me that I'm pregnant. And we begin to talk about that and discuss that. And she encourages me the first thing to do is, before I tell anyone else, to tell my mother.
Sure.
And so that was extremely hard, but that's what I did. And then my mother and I were able to walk through that together alongside the center at the time. That was Save a Life, which we now know in our area as Women's Resource Center.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And she, a block down the road, though, was the abortion center. So she went in the wrong door.
Man, I've got
different.
So many questions, so many places I want to go. I've heard your story before, and your story is really powerful, and where God's brought you in your life, I think is a testament to God being able to keep you even in those moments where things are really, really difficult. And you're, in church world, we say when you're running from God, because we know that God has a plan for everybody. According to the word, there's a plan for everybody. Right. And so it just depends on if you surrender to that call, and that plan that God has for your life, what you're going to, how what God's going to be able to do with you. And so even in those moments where you're running, I think that's such a powerful thing to remember, that just because you were making those choices that were taking you farther from what God had in store for you and from his call on your life, it didn't change the fact that there was still a call on your life, even if you didn't know it, And so I got a couple of things I want to ask both of you. You said, one of the things you said earlier was that you've got 6 boys that you're raising at home, right? So God help you, first off. That's crazy. So knowing your background, right? So what's in, just for these guys, ages of the boys that you're raising right now? What are the ages?
So our oldest son is 27.
Mm-hmm.
And then, our oldest son, Austin, he was that child that I was pregnant with.
That's awesome.
At 13 years old, a mom of at 14. And then Caleb is 21.
Right.
And Eli is 18, Jonathan is 15, Gabe is 12, and Max is 12.
Wow. Okay. So with that knowledge now, and most of those boys, I guess all of them still at home for the time being, right?
This year. The 3 oldest will move out this year.
They'll move out very soon. So if you don't know, if you've watched one of our previous episodes, Caleb that is going to Africa to be a missionary, that is their second oldest child. And so you just got this family of missionaries, because their 18-year-old just got commissioned as a missionary as well. So, God is just doing some amazing things through the Miller family. And so anyway, going back to the question I want to ask is just the knowledge of where you've come from, how God brought you guys to where you're at right now, the things that you've been through, the things that you've seen, and now being called to children and family ministry. My question is, what are some practical tips that you would give to a mom or a dad that has kids in that kind of preteen, age group right there, that, because the thing that I've seen here lately, and I'm sure you guys have seen this too, that, there's this push to let your kids kind of be autonomous. Like, they got to have their own space and all the social media and all of the screen time. And I don't want to infringe. I want them to know that they've got room to be themselves and all those kind of things. How do you navigate those? What are some practical tips with what you guys are doing now that you would say to parents that might be struggling with, finding out some things about their kids that they're going through or whatever?
Well, one thing I would say for sure, be a parent, not a friend. That's the first thing.
Sure.
Second thing is put them in a place where they're in the presence of God. Put them in a place where they're able to hear the voice of God.
Sure.
And teach them what that means, because that's so important.
Right.
And I think a lot of times especially today, in today's society, it's okay. Let them do whatever let them be whoever they want to be. Let them do whatever they want to do. Well, as long as that lines up with the Bible, that's good.
Sure.
But if not, then man, you've got to stand up and be a parent.
Right.
And I think a lot of times people don't want to do that anymore. They don't want to stand up and say, "Hey, I need to stand up."
Right. Right.
What the Bible says. I need to stand up for what morals. For morals.
Right. Well, and I think one of the things that I've seen is there's the word that gets thrown around a lot in our society right now is love. Just love everybody. We got to love people, and even in church world, we're saying that a lot too, which is true. We do. We need to love people. I mean, that's what we want to do. But the problem is, I think sometimes what's happened in our society is that we've kind of stolen the word love and made it mean something that it doesn't mean. And when we say love, what we actually are saying is, or what society is actually saying is, we want to let you do whatever you want to do. Because if I tell you that you're wrong, then that's not loving anymore. When in reality, and what I kind of hear you saying, Scott, is that part of being a parent is loving your kid, but loving your kid is loving your kid enough to correct your kid. And loving your kid is there's a part of love that wants you to have everything that you ever wanted, but there's also a part of love to know that sometimes what you want is not good enough, is not good for you, and you need to make some better choices. And love is being able to guide and shape those decisions, right? Because I mean, thank God for parents. My parents, I grew up in a pastor's home as well. I was kind of like you. I was in church, cut my teeth on the front row, and all those things. And so thank God for parents that loved me enough to tell me no. Yeah. Now I still did some stupid stuff and stuff that I'm not proud of, but thank God for that. With your story, Annie, what would you add? Let me ask you a specific question. If you've got a parent that has a kid that finds out that their kid is involved in some of the same things you were involved in at that same age, like how would you, what are some practical tips you would give them for that?
So I would say first thing is knowing that your voice is valid. Parents, that one of the lies that the enemy wants parents to believe, whether you're a believer or not, there is an attack. It is important to know whether you're a believer in Christ or not.
Sure.
It's important to know that there is an attack on the family. There is an assault to destroy the unit of family. God ordained the family unit, and the enemy cannot stand for parents to step in godly, loving authority in their homes. And so the first thing that I would say is to know the value of your voice in your children's lives.
Right.
The enemy wants parents to believe that we do not have any value to put into our kids' lives. And parents are the number one most influential person in a child's life.
Absolutely.
For the positive
or the negative. Yeah, that's true.
And so the most important influence in a child's life. And so for parents to know that, to get that, to understand that, and even when you don't see it with your eyes, when you're encouraging, when you're disciplining, when you're sharing truth, when you're walking your kids in the way that they need to go, even if you don't see them responding yet in the way that you want them to or the way that you know is right, be consistent. Be consistent to say the things that are important, to say the things that are valuable, because you may not think they're listening, but they're listening so much. My mother today is my hero. She made a lot of mistakes. But she loved me. And she didn't always get it right, but when it mattered, she did the hard things. And being consistent in my life, even when I was making poor choices, she let me know that I was loved. And I heard her voice, even though I didn't respond in those difficult moments and those hard moments. It was in me and it's a part of me.
That's awesome.
And so even as a parent, like I see that things I've said to my kids and I don't think they're listening. And then I hear them regurgitate it later, you know, and I'm like I put that in you.
You were actually listening.
Yes, you know. And I hear parents say a lot of times, like, I want to give my kids their own choice. I don't want to force them to make this decision. I want them to, you know, all that kind of stuff. And with social media, with devices, with TV, with friends, all that kind of stuff, we wouldn't hand our kids a loaded gun and say, with just one bullet in it, and say, have fun with this.
Well, this is Alabama. You don't know. I mean, you know, we are in Sims. People love their guns here. But no, but you're absolutely right. I'm just playing.
We wouldn't take a gun and put it in an elementary age kid's hand, not teaching them anything.
Absolutely.
And just say, you figure it out.
Have fun.
Because somebody's going to get hurt. They're going to get hurt, or someone else in the mix.
And that's what we're doing with an even more dangerous weapon, and that's that cell phone.
That's the truth.
When you put it in their hand and say, here you go. I mean,
well, and we had, you know, it's I'm glad you brought that up. We actually did a podcast, I guess last year maybe, with Bree Viger. I don't know if you guys know Bree or not, but Bree her story is just a fantastic story of just, you know, excuse me, just the danger of social media and being connected by someone connecting to her that was, a trafficker and was, forcing her to do some things under threat of hurting her family and all those kind of things that were sexual in nature with an older man, online with pictures and that kind of thing. And her story of her mom kind of walking in the middle of that one night and how close she realized she was to actually being grabbed at one point when she was at a beauty contest that she was in, or a pageant that she was in. Sorry. And I think the lesson to be learned is, one thing you said was, and I love the fact that you put there, Annie, where you said, you wouldn't give an elementary school kid a gun without some kind of proper guidance and teaching on how to use it correctly. Right. There's plenty of people, we joke about this is Alabama and we live in Sims, but there's plenty of people in our society that take their kids shooting and hunting and all that kind of stuff. I mean, from a very young age, but just about to a man, it's a pride thing for a man in the South. If you don't live in the South, you know this. It's a pride thing for a man in the South to teach their kid to respect a weapon, to be able to use it for what it's being used for. And when you hunt, to hunt for a purpose, that it's not just because I get to kill something. That's murder. But hunting for sport, hunting to get meat, to fill your freezer, and to do that with a purpose is important. So it's the same thing when you look at something like this. Social media in and of itself, your cell phone in and of itself can be a really fantastic tool. I mean, this will be on social media. We are getting your story out to people through social media and through YouTube and things like that. But without proper usage and without proper guide rails and those kind of things, especially when your kids are still forming their idea of identity and who they are and trying to test boundaries, man, it can be so dangerous. And so, you know, putting those parameters, I would assume you guys would be on board with putting parameters on screen time and cell phone usage and what you can do and what you can't do as a kid, and speak to some of that. Like what's your tips on that for parents?
And some of that we've picked up from other people.
Sure.
So we messed up as parents early on and allowed more freedom than we should have.
Sure.
And it bit us in the butt.
Right.
You know, we saw the effects of how that impacted our kids, and so then we backed up.
Right.
There was actually a season where our kids, we didn't have boundaries, and I would notice, like when they were on their video games and different things like that, their attitudes would change.
Sure.
The way that they interacted with each other would change. And when I began watching that pattern, I just came in one day and I cleaned house. I packed it all up. I got rid of all the games. I was just like, I'm done. But I don't know that that's always the best method. You know, that was kind of.
But it may be a method.
But it could be a method.
Right.
It was a method at that time.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And my kids remember it, and so they. But some of the guidelines that we are is like our older kid, the older three boys now, they've earned our trust, and so they don't have these same guidelines as they did, and they're moving out of our house this year. But we've always made our kids to charge their phones in our room at night.
Sure.
You know, not to have a certain time that their phones are shut off in the evening, and those then go in our room. They're not on their phones in their room all night long.
Right.
So many kids, young kids, teenagers who just sit on their phones all night long, and they say, I play on my phone because I can't sleep.
Yeah.
Well, they're not sleeping because they
they're
have the
playing on their
option.
phone. That's right.
Or video games. We've not let our kids have TVs and video games in their bedrooms.
Right.
We have a common space where they can watch TV, or a common space where they can get on the internet, or they can play video games.
Right.
So none of that is in the privacy of their bedrooms, because then that just opens the door for a lot of temptation. And so a lot of these things we've learned from other people and have just gleaned from their knowledge and their experience.
Right.
And when our boys were, two of our boys, Caleb and Eli, the one that's going to Africa and the one that's U.S. missionary to the World Prayer Center. So when they were in middle school, someone came to their school and talked to the students, and then had a session that night for the parents about social media and device use and all those things, all the screen things, and talked about putting limits, putting guides and stuff like that. Well, we already had implemented those things. And for my boys, hearing that conversation, it was like, this makes sense. This is why my parents do this.
That's
They're protecting us.
Had to hear it from somebody else.
Yeah, because your parents have no idea what they're talking about. That's the truth. Yeah.
But all of their friends were like, because the school was giving incentive to parents that came to the meeting that night, they were like throwing in some incentive of taking off tuition or whatever for school. And all the other kids were trying to talk their parents into not going that night. They hated the conversation.
Because they didn't want to lose their screen time.
Yeah,
that's right.
But my kids were like, dude, this is good stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I remember when, so we have a lot of the same rules for our kids, and you know, my oldest son is 21. My middle son is 18. And so they're kind of at that same space now that your older kids are, that, you know, those restrictions have kind of been loosened and those kind of, and it's so weird when kids get to be like adult kids. Yeah. And I was talking to Zach. That's my oldest son. I was talking to Zach the other day, and I said, he's a great kid, but he's still, I say but is not the right word. He's a great kid. And even though he's older, he still wants our parental approval on every decision that he makes. And there's certain things that, you know, we're like, you know, no, you're not going to do that. And if you do, we don't have a lot of recourse anymore other than to tell you you're not going to do that and still live at our house. Yeah. We can't tell you can't do it because you're 21 at this point. And I'm not talking about anything in particular. I'm just talking about, you know, there's certain things that we kind of have a strong stance on. And I said, but there's other things that are just kind of personal preference, that like kind of the way I view things, the way culture views things, and that kind of thing. And so he was really wanting this thing. He was talking about some stuff, and you could tell he really wanted his mom and I to be like, yeah, we're behind you 100%. And finally, I just looked at him and I said, son, at the end of the day, this has to be your decision.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not going to love you any less. I don't agree with it if you decide to do it. I don't think it's the smartest thing for you to do.
Yeah.
But also, it's not going to change anything about our relationship or whatever. And I told him, and I think this is it is kind of this moment that I had, that when your kids hit that age, you go from like the authority figure to the advisory figure. Yeah. And that's a really hard transition for both sides to go through, because the realization that I can't tell you what to do anymore, but I can give you advice and just pray that you have caught the things that I've tried to teach you for the last 20 years, you know? And I say all that to say, you know, I remember when Zach had hit this age to where we didn't let them have, excuse me, they had cell phones, and of course they had screen time and all that kind of stuff set up to where it blocks some stuff, and they had to, all that stuff. But we actually didn't, we found out that you could take the internet off the phone. Like you didn't have Safari or Chrome or whatever it is, you could actually block that completely so they didn't have access to it. And so that's what we did immediately before we gave them a cell phone, was we took internet completely off the phone. Now, granted, I'm not an idiot. I understand that Instagram still has stuff there, and there's still ways to get things. Kids are smart. They can find all the bad stuff.
Super smart.
You know?
So, and I'll tell you one little thing on screen time.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing screen time for your kids and it shuts off at a certain time, there are ways to change that.
Really?
They know them. They just change it to a different time zone, and they have more time because the time's different in a different time zone. In like Japan, it's not 10 o'clock at
I would
night.
have never thought of that. But one of our
Me
kids
neither.
did.
Yes.
Me neither.
Yes, our kids are way smarter than us, and we have to remember that.
Look, but so I remember when Zach really started, like in there was something going on. I think it was work or something, and he there was like stuff that he needed internet for work and that kind of thing, for stuff they did, and he would always text my wife, because she handles like all of that stuff, and I'm like, I don't, just whatever, you do it. So he would always text her like, hey, can you do this for me on the internet? And finally she was like, look, it's time. We need to just download Safari for you, because this is, and you know, at his age, he was probably 18 or 19 at the point, and he said, I just don't want it. I just don't want it. It's too much of a temptation for me. I know myself well enough to know that I just don't. And that made me so proud that even at that age that you know what I mean? So I think there is that point that you just got to let them grow up and teach them right. And hopefully they make the right decisions. But, okay. So we've been talking for about 30 minutes now. Let's shift gears a little bit. Okay. Let's talk about some fun stuff.
Awesome. I like
so I'm going to pepper you with some questions, and you guys tell me quick answers. Okay. We'll see how this goes. I've got some in my head, but I'm going to come up with some off the top of my head too, because I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to ask you yet. We're going to have fun with this. Okay. So, let's see. City or country?
Country.
Country. Okay. All right. I was hoping you were going to say city. And you say, I'm a little bit country. No? Okay.
Definitely country.
Yes.
Okay.
I enjoy strolls into the city.
Okay.
But I enjoy life in the country.
Let's get back out into the country. I get it. Okay. I know this, but I'll ask it just to say it. Favorite football team?
Alabama. There is no other.
I'm sorry, team. That's incorrect.
there is only Alabama.
Listen. You guys don't know this, but Scott's Alabama football parties are like infamous. I mean, I remember the house over in Satsuma. There were so many people in that house. I mean, it was ridiculous to watch that stupid Alabama football that my team can't ever beat. It makes me so mad. But anyway, look, your day's coming, bro. Nick's retiring at some point.
I know. It's going to be bad, too. It's really bad.
Okay, so favorite food style, not specific food, but favorite style of food. Italian, Mexican. Chinese food. Okay.
100%.
Italian food. Oh, man. I like some Chinese food now. Sometimes I like Italian. Here's my problem with Italian food. I'm just going to give you insight into my life, my big boy life. I don't feel like I want to go sit down to a meal and have sides with my meal. Yeah. I don't want to just get a bowl of pasta. Like I want meat with 2 or 3 vegetables. Like, give me some country food. But I do like pasta. I do like some Italian.
I like pasta. Yeah.
Okay. So, favorite outdoor activity to do.
My new favorite is golf.
I knew you were going to say that.
Absolutely.
So you like to play golf?
I do.
So here's the question. I was going to say, are you good at it? That's the question. You're
nope. Look, I golfed,
not good at it.
Yesterday. Was it yesterday? Okay. I golfed yesterday and I got a 122. So I am not good at it.
So in case you don't know, a 122 is not good.
It's not good.
But you're a beginner.
It's good for me. So, that was my third time. And that was my best.
That's right. Did you have any good shots? I'll ask you that.
No.
Not one good shot.
Well, maybe one.
Okay.
Maybe one.
All right. So my dad started playing golf when let's see. So I was about 15, which would have made my dad about 55 when my dad started playing golf, because he was 40 when I was born. And the only reason Dad started playing golf was because we would go to Daytona Beach every year for a week or two with my aunt and uncle, and my uncle played every day while we were on vacation. And so my dad would either just stay at the hotel while my uncle was off playing golf, or he would go just ride in the golf cart with him. And so one year he came home with a set of golf clubs. My mom was like, "You're going to play golf?" And he was like, "I'm just tired of just riding in the cart or sitting at the hotel with the women. I want to just do something." And so he started playing at 55, and he was terrible. Okay. But he got pretty good as he got older. So there's hope for you to get better. And he always told me, he was like, every time you play, it doesn't matter how bad you are, you have at least one shot that I call the comebacker. Yeah. It makes you go, all right, I can do this.
Maybe I'm not as horrible
I
as I
can
think.
do this.
That's what's so bad about that game is like the whole game's horrible, and you're like, I'm not ever playing this again.
That's right.
And then you get one.
And then you have that one shot, and you're like,
I got to come back.
I think I can do that. I think I can do this again. That's right. Okay. All right. So, Annie, what has been the most difficult thing about raising 6 boys at one time?
Wow.
Define that question any way you want to.
Wow. It's just messy.
Yeah.
It's just messy. There's a lot of smell.
Because if it's girls, the smells are very different. It's florals and Bath and Body.
No floral.
I do have one of our boys, Caleb, our Africa kid. Yeah. He's all about some Bath and Body. He likes Bath and Body store. But I would say on a light hearted side, the smells and the mess, but then a little deeper, the mess. Yeah. The mess.
It don't matter what level, the mess is just everywhere. Okay. So what is your go-to meal if you've got to cook something quick for 6 kids and Scott Miller?
Depending on who's cooking.
Right.
All right, go either one. Which one?
Go-to meal, just quick and throw it together. That's a great.
Mine's hamburger. If I have to do it, I'd throw hamburgers on the grill.
Like a hamburger.
Yeah.
Man, I love a hamburger.
I'm going to go like a vegetable stir fry.
Okay.
And
there's no vegetable in my meal.
Just some chicken. He kicks all the lettuce and tomato off the burger. They don't even get to be a part of it. Yeah. So I'm going to say go-to is probably going to be like a vegetable stir fry with some chicken.
That's funny.
That's why we normally cook together. Yeah. I'll do the meat and then she does all that other.
I remember. Do you remember that show King of Queens with Kevin James? I remember him and his guys would like hang out in their basement sometimes and watch football and stuff. And there was this one scene that always made me laugh when they're all talking about they all brought like TV dinners. Remember like the old like Hungry Man TV dinners? And he said they were all like saying what they had, and he was like, "Yeah, I've got like Salisbury steak and meatloaf and then broccoli." And then he kind of looked at it and he goes, "I mean, is that too much meat?" And the other guy goes, "I was thinking it was too much vegetable, man." Like, all right, that's fair. That's fair. That's funny. Okay, favorite state you visited so far?
So a big part of our family is family vacation. Like every year we make sure we go on a family vacation. Like even in the early years, if we didn't have the funds, we'd let the power bill slip and take the kids camping and stuff like that. Like we were all about investing in our family. Yeah. So we went to the Grand Canyon.
And if you let the power bill slip too much and then the rent slips, then you're just camping for life.
Camping for life. Yeah, it's the whole thing. But so we got to go to the Grand Canyon. So we drove through Mississippi, Louisiana, where Texas, all the things. And so Arkansas was pretty neat.
Really? I did not expect Arkansas.
Yeah, not Arkansas, Arizona.
I was about to say
I'm lying, not Arkansas.
We went through there.
There's nothing wrong with Arkansas. If you're in Arkansas is awesome. The wife is from Arkansas, but
so much diversity. The Grand Canyon. We had snow. And we had cactus, and all this kind of stuff. So that was pretty cool. California was really cool.
California was cool. I think Arizona, though, for me was which I love Tennessee. I don't like the football team, but I love
that's
the
hard,
state.
man.
Yeah.
I tell Keisha that all the time, that we talked a lot about like where we would like to live after all the kids are out, because what I do, I can do from anywhere, and we have batted around Tennessee so many times, and I'm like,
if it wasn't for that stinking football,
that creamsicle orange, man, it just gets me. I don't know. Golly, it was bad. But yeah, no, I love the mountains too. So, okay. So that's another question. Mountains or beach?
Mountains.
Yeah, me too, man. Yeah. Golly, you can take the beach. I was talking to a friend of mine that I work with. She's from St. Louis. We were having kind of a business meeting last week, and she was driving down from St. Louis to Gulf Shores for a week. And she was like, "You're like only an hour from there, right?" I was like, "Yeah." She was like, "How many times have you been to the beach since you've been there?" I was like, "Literally none." Yeah. Like not one.
Rarely
Since I moved back in 2019, I've not gone one time.
we try to go maybe once a year.
Sometimes a couple times. We'll hit a couple times a year.
I tell people all the time, I don't mind beach life, like the seafood restaurants and the souvenir shops and like all that stuff, but I just have no desire to go sit in sand and
then sand,
the sun. It's just awful. And just and then lug all the stuff down to the and I've only got 3 kids. I mean, 6 kids. Good Lord, you're gonna.
One of the positive things is when you have a lot of kids, you have a lot of help.
That's right. That's right. That's true.
They're a great moving crew. They really are.
I love it.
Basketball team.
That's right. That's right.
Things,
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so any funny stories that you can share from life, from ministry, from business, anything?
Oh gosh, there's all kinds of them.
I know. I should have teed this up before you came,
so we could have prepared. But probably one. So we got asked by a church a couple of months ago. A funny ministry story or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's real common when we talk about Scott and I have served in kids, youth, young adults, and worship ministry for over 20 years. And I lay claim to worship ministry, that I get to be a part of that ministry. You're laughing because but I lay claim to it because I print his music. And so I'm like, I'm a part of
You're
worship.
part of the worship
ministry.
team. Yeah, sure.
But everybody that knows me knows that God did not give me with a voice to sing. And I want to sing so desperately. But that's not the gift. God gave me revelation of why that is, because I talk over Scott all the time when we're talking.
She really does.
And so last year, the Holy Spirit was like, okay, if you sang, you would sing over him. And that's his flow. So anyways, now I know. And so I can be okay with it. But we were at a church. We're leading, because we lead family ministry. We go in, we do family crusades. And we have a team that's on the stage leading the motions to the song, engaging in worship, all that kind of stuff. And I have my microphone, my headset on. And in parts of the song, I'll interact with the kids. I'm standing on the floor. I'm not on the platform, but I'll interact like girls, or whatever. I'm just kind of encouraging it. And so I will sing the song under my breath, which isn't a big deal because the room is loud. We were at a church. There were, 400 or 500 people.
Make a joyful noise.
That's it. I'm singing just under my breath real softly and then engaging with the crowd every so often. Well, I just happened to go back looking for something on the live feed.
Oh, no.
And realized my mic was very hot. And so
she was louder than the worship song.
So in the room, you can't hear me singing, but those poor people watching the service online, they had to suffer through.
That's not right.
Yes.
That's funny stuff. That's funny stuff. Okay, so outside of ministry, you have a long history in construction, contractor work, all that kind of stuff, right? So in fact, right now you're doing some of that. So talk to me about that side of what you do right now.
Man, things are great right now. Construction is booming. It's busy.
Right.
Lord's been really good to us, keeping us busy. And so what we do is we always travel when we go U.S. mission stuff. But when I'm home, which is here sporadically lately, but I have a business partner. My brother-in-law, Chris, her brother is my business partner. And so yes, we have it's called XL Construction, and we stay pretty steady, pretty busy. But we do commercial, residential, the whole deal.
Right.
And so when I'm not in town, I do things. I'm still able to work, do payroll and bidding and all that stuff.
Right.
And so, but it's been really good. It's been really cool. It's been busy.
They focus on like remodel, repairs, additions, things of that nature. And
so if are you guys still looking for business right now? Like,
absolutely.
Okay, so if somebody wants to get in touch with XL Construction, what phone number should they call? We'll put it right here.
Okay. It's 251-610-9051.
That phone number sounds so familiar because
it used to be
it
your
was
phone
mine
number.
for a long time. All right. And then do you have an email address?
Yes.
We'll put it right here.
You can email Scott at the letter X, the letter L, construction.net.
Perfect. Any other way that people need to get in touch with you or just through those
Check
two?
us out on Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff.
Yeah,
Excel.
the website,
Facebook and Instagram.
Website.
Oh, yeah. Website will be right here.
Yes.
Okay. And what is the website?
excelconstruction.net. Yes.
excelconstruction.net.
Look at that. Okay. It's going to be
She
right
knows that better
there.
than they. She keeps up with all that.
Right now, we are surrounded with stuff.
Excel things.
Yeah, it's gonna be great for you. Okay, so with the construction background, I know you've built a lot of things that have helped you guys in ministry. So tell me some of the things that you've created in your past.
So fun things. Fun things for ministry. Talk about the stages.
Yeah.
We've had a stage that completely rotated.
Okay, hold on.
So
Let me time out for just a second, okay? Because I try to remember when we're doing this that we're all from the same world. So sometimes we talk about things like everybody knows what we're talking about. So one thing we haven't talked about yet, and I'm coming back to what I just asked you, but I want to give some context. So tell us what you guys do. Like what is a crusade? What is the thing that you guys do at a church?
So we've been kids pastors, youth pastors, young adult pastors, and so we've done ministry. So when we talk about stages, we're talking about over the years. But so when we do an event, it can be a 1 to 5 day or however many days, and so that's like a 2-hour service where there's fun, exciting, engaging things, and we're presenting truth to the congregation. So that's what we would call a family crusade. So what we do is we do events. We do camps where the whole state will come together, bring kids together from the entire state, and we speak at the camps. So we do camps, we do outreach where we'll do things in the parks and stuff like that, and partner with churches and just help love on their community. We do leadership development and parenting workshops. So that's kind of all the things that we're doing in ministry.
Right.
And
so when you're like on stage, is it just like you preaching to kids? Is that all you do?
It's all interactive. It's all interactive. So there's puppets that come out. There's characters that come out.
So we're doing costumes. You're doing games. You're doing puppets. You're doing all this kind of stuff. Okay, cool. Awesome. I just wanted there to be
the stage.
Yes. Okay. There we go. I just wanted there to be a context for what we're talking about. Okay. So cool things you've done.
Yeah, we've done stages where like there'll be one scene and then the lights will go out and you roll that thing around and it's a different scene.
Like the whole stage spins.
Will spin.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
I'm so glad I wasn't here when you did that.
That one was ridiculous.
It was cool.
We've had at the church we've had 3-story stages where it's different, and we'd have the band on the very top stage, and so that was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah, we
That's
had
amazing.
Stuff. We have water shoots out the front of the stage.
What?
Yeah, we put sprinkler system things that shoot out with everybody in the whole audience.
And that's because Scott does a character, this Dr. Beaker character that's become, whatever, people love him. But so he comes out and he does all this crazy stuff. When he comes out, things happen and water shoots and, just things randomly happen.
Okay, so tell us about Dr. Beaker. Like how was Dr. Beaker born? And what I'll try to find some footage of Dr. Beaker that I can kind of superimpose and post a little bit.
Yeah, It came out of a kid's curriculum. We were using somebody else's resource, and it had a character and a soundbite of Dr. Beaker. Scott had done all kinds of characters in kids' church before.
That one stuck.
Yeah,
more than any of the other ones. I guess he's been around for
probably 15 years.
Yeah.
Longer. Yeah.
Well,
but it didn't stick with the kids. Like the kids liked it, but they liked all the characters that he did. But we did it one time in a summer crusade, and the adults fell in love with him.
Really?
And the next year we tried to not do him, and the adults are like,
everybody wanted to know where Beaker was. That's funny.
Yeah, like they were mad.
Right. So what are you doing?
We have a camp that we go to.
Don't bring those guys back.
So we have a camp that we lead every summer or most summers. And anyways, there's a group that comes from a church, and every year they bring a shirt, #Beaker. It's a new shirt, and it's got a new saying.
Funny.
And so they're like his fan crew.
That is so funny. So the Dr. Beaker. So one thing we have not talked about is that I was on staff as youth pastor when Annie came on as children's pastor at Fountain of Life Church in Saraland, which is a suburb of Mobile. And then I left for a little while, came back in 2019. And at that point, Scott and Annie both were on staff at the church there. And so we've worked together for a long time on a lot of things, a lot of ministry projects and that kind of deal. And excuse me. And so I've been on Christmas floats with you guys with, Dr. Beaker, AKA Scott Miller dressed up as Dr. Beaker on this Christmas float with I mean, crowds of people like shouting, Dr. Beaker. And y'all, I'm not even talking about kids. I'm talking about like grown people.
It's grown people.
Yeah.
Grown people and you would think, okay, church people, because Fountain of Life it's not a small church. I mean, it's a decent sized little church. And you would think it would be like adults that from the congregation that are just at the parade. No, it's people I've never seen in my life are just losing their minds for this, guy with a bald cap and a lab coat on. Yeah. And it's the funniest thing.
It's kind of funny because I look back years ago, he would actually use a white paint to paint his beard white.
Not anymore.
But not anymore.
He has
got the white covered now. Yeah. You're good to go.
It was actually kind of cool. We've been in restaurants before and people will overhear him talking, and they're like,
we got 10 minutes.
Okay. There's some people that are like overhear him talking. They're like, hey, wait a second. Are you Dr. Beaker? But probably one of the coolest things when our son Gabe was born, he was born a month early and ended up in the NICU.
Wow.
And I'm just frustrated trying to figure out and understand why God's got us in this season.
Sure.
I have other kids to get home and tend to and all that kind of stuff. And Scott goes into the NICU. I was still in the hospital. Scott goes into the NICU to see Gabe, and he actually runs into someone at the washing station that recognized him from a family crusade, not someone that attended our church. They just visited with someone, and it was a total God moment. They began talking to him. They're like, hold on a second. I'm sorry to ask you this, but are you Dr. Beaker? So
that's so funny.
That conversation happens. They realize that we're there. They move our baby Gabe to another nursery that's closer to them.
Yeah.
They discharge me, and I'm in and out seeing about Gabe in the nursery. And the nurse stops me one day. It was actually a day I was so frustrated because they kept saying, if he does this, he'll go home tomorrow. If he does this, and we kept staying and staying. Yeah. And I was so frustrated. I had left out of the NICU, and I'm just crying. And I'm like, God, what is the purpose? What are you doing? Why are we still here?
Sure.
And as I'm walking back into the NICU unit, the nurse stopped me, and she's like, I'm sorry, are you guys pastors? I'm like, I'm kids pastor, whatever. And she said, well, there's a family here that said that they know you, and their baby is currently in the process of dying.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
And the baby was about 2 months old. I don't remember exactly, but had dealt with some heart things and all of that kind of stuff, and just was not surviving, and literally was taking his last breath.
Wow.
And they had nobody to be there with them, no minister to be there with them.
That's so heavy.
They asked, would I be willing to go in there? And so many times the Lord just positioned you, like he would use a silly character to connect, because they wouldn't have remembered me or remembered him otherwise. And I was able to just stand there and cry with that family as they said goodbye to their baby. And then I realized, you know what? Gabe was born 4 weeks early, and there was a purpose to it. Yeah. And God put us in that NICU for a specific moment.
So cool how God always has a purpose.
That's right. Sometimes it's you don't see it until you start seeing it. I mean, that's such a simple thing to say, but you wonder, and we know, that the word says that all things work together for the good of those that love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. But it's so hard to see that sometimes.
That's right.
Until you see it. And then you're like,
wow.
Yeah. Why don't I have more faith? Right. God has never let me down. There may be years when I don't understand, but the second you do, you're like, all right, I get it.
Well, it's incredible. The friend that I sat in her bedroom and she offered me the cigarette took me down a detour, in my journey. Like God, like you said earlier, God had a plan. And I got off track. He didn't put me off track. I got off track because of my decisions. Right. But in that detour, the Lord allowed me to grab someone. Right. Because the friend that offered me that cigarette became my best friend. Wow. And that's actually, 2 of our boys are not our biological children, but this friend of mine, my best friend, has been stuck in addiction for 25 years. And so we've had permanent custody of her boys for 9 years. Wow. And the Lord is so good and so gracious. Whenever we will just surrender to his plans and purposes, he will do incredible things. And she, right now, as we're recording this podcast, she is at my house detoxing. Wow. And we are driving her to Birmingham for recovery on Friday. And so this week, as we're just praying over her, she's tried to detox before. She's tried to get help. Sure. And the Lord just has declared to us that our home will be a house of miracles. Wow. That she needed to be in our house to walk through this process. And so as I'm praying over her, the Lord just dropped this in my spirit. And he said, you feel like your detours disqualified you, but what if, just maybe, your detour has provided the way to deliver you to your destiny. And so sometimes we get off track in life and we think, okay, I've messed up. I'm too far. I'll never, my greatest desire as a child was to be a mom and just to love kids. Sure. And And there was a season in my life that I thought that will never happen in the way that I want it to happen.
Right.
And I took a detour. But then at 17 years old, I walked into a church with people who stepped into my mess and loved me like crazy.
Come on.
And allowed the opportunity for me to really see who God was, that he wasn't this condemning God,
Right.
like sitting back, angry at us for what we're doing. Like
Sure.
he is a just God and a God of love, and his desire is for his children to come back to him.
So true.
And so in that process, the Lord has just turned my mess into a masterpiece and made something beautiful out of something that could have been really, really bad.
Yeah. That's so good.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a good talk today, guys. Really enjoyed having you guys on the podcast.
Enjoyed being here.
All right. So as we're getting ready to close, I'm just going to ask a couple more little questions. Scott, if you could say anything to a dad that's struggling to connect with his kids, what would you say?
I would say, first of all, keep God first in your relationship.
Sure.
Because a lot of times guys get busy. We get busy with work, and we got to do this, we got to do that,
Right.
we got to provide, and we got to have this, got to take care of the house, got to take
Sure.
care of the yard, and our relationship with God kind of suffers. And when that relationship suffers, your relationship with your kids suffer. And man, if you can get this right, then this will be fine.
Sure.
But this is so important. And then just pouring into your kids. Any time you get an opportunity, let your kids know that it's okay to come to you.
Right.
Because if they don't feel like it's okay, then they're going to go to somebody else.
Absolutely.
We don't want them going to anybody else.
That's right.
And so I think that's important. Be approachable.
Okay.
And if you mess up, because you're going to mess up, because you're human, take that.
Right.
Hey, I messed up. I got onto you
That's
a little
good,
too
man.
hard here.
Yeah.
I messed up. I'm sorry. You saying sorry to your kids, it's tough.
That's big. Yeah.
But it's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really good. Annie, if you've got, we've talked a lot about the kids and just, having to deal with him as well.
My biggest kid.
But yeah, right. So in all seriousness, if you were talking to a mom who feels completely overwhelmed, what would you tell her?
Don't give up. Just don't give up. Don't feel like you've messed up. Maybe you've made some bad choices. Maybe you've handled things wrong. But like Scott said, be willing to let go of needing to be in control and see your kid's heart. Like, ask the Lord to show you your kid's heart. Step into their world. I remember sitting in my laundry room in the mess. That was the messiest room in my house, and my kids left me alone in there.
Sure.
And many times just sitting on the floor in the middle of the mess, crying and just saying, God, this is not the kind of mom I want to be. I don't want to scream at my kids. I don't want to lose my mind. And I would just feel like, gosh, I've messed up again.
Yeah.
But going back to the Father, going to my kids and apologizing and seeing their heart. Why did you do the thing that you did? What was the reason behind why you said that, why you did that? Help me to shepherd your heart well, not just control your actions.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
I think, I do a lot of coaching for people. And one of the things we talk about a lot, that it seems like a lot of, especially business leaders, struggle with is having the tough conversations with employees or with leaders that are under them, that kind of thing, when mistakes have been made, when failures happen. And the problem is, a lot of times what I see, and I'm bringing this back to the parenting conversations we just had, what I see is a lot of times leaders either avoid the conversation or they go in with guns blazing. Right. And I tell people all the time, tough conversations don't get easier because you put them off.
That's right.
Right. So let's handle them. Let's just go ahead and handle it now and be done with it. But one of the most powerful questions you can ask is why. Yeah. Go into a conversation when trust has been broken, when mistakes have been made, when failures have happened. And instead of just saying, hey, you need to get your crap together, which there's probably going to be a time for that. But if you can go in and ask a whole lot of questions and say a whole lot less things in the beginning, but just ask a lot of questions first, you're going to find out a lot more layers of where your people's hearts are at, where their minds are at. So if we're talking about parenting, it's the same thing. When your kid messes up, there's usually a deeper reason to messing up. And especially one of the things you said is that, you trying to fit in with the people around you and be cool or whatever it was, and the funny thing that people, we feel like we struggle against that our whole lives, right? But Abraham Maslow, who's a psychologist from years and years ago, he created the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and one of those needs, there's 5 basic needs of human belonging, of human nature, and one of those needs is a sense of belonging. Yeah. And so, according to psychiatry, a sense of belonging is a basic human need. The problem is a lot of times we try to find that sense of belonging in places where we don't need to find it. Right. And so finding a place to belong that's a healthy place is important. You know what I mean? Because your kids, you, me, all of us, it doesn't matter whether we're, in our 40s or whether we're in our preteens, we all want to find a place to belong. Yeah. And so I think everything today has been kind of pointing back to being together, being a place in your family, to be a place where you belong well, and being there, being available, and knowing you're enough, and all of those things. I think it's really important.
One of the biggest mistakes I've made with my kids is assuming I know why.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Yeah. That's a mistake. That's a mistake. Well, guys, look, we've got about 2 minutes left on our memory card, and we've just about filled this bad boy up. So, it's been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed this, and looking forward to being able to drop this for the folks out there and letting them hear your story and all that stuff. Guys, thank y'all so much. Look, I hope you guys enjoyed Suitcase. Go like and subscribe and all those kind of things. Share it with anybody who needs to hear an inspiring story of 2 folks that are unpacking life and doing some really great things out in our world. You guys call Excel Construction, call Heartbeat Family Ministries, schedule these guys to come do something awesome for your kids ministry, for your church. And if you go to church, tell your pastor to schedule them to come do something. Doesn't matter what kind of church you go to, unless it's the Church of Satan, they're probably not going to come there.
I don't know. That might be a church I would love to go to.
That might be a church we just want to check out, just see what that's all about.
Yes.
But yeah, and then if you need any kind of construction work, Scott Miller is your man. Call Excel Construction. They're going to get you set up right. So, hey, y'all have a great day, and we'll see you next time.